we'll come back to our own topic today, which is about cracking the UX psychology code. And for that, we have Dr. Verena with us today. She is based out of Austria, and she is one of the European pioneer of usability and user experience, having worked in respective industrial and as well as research settings for more than 30 years. She has a good experience of for UX research part in over the globe. She has worked a lot, and she's even PhD in psychology as well. So, in fact, to go more about this, I would request Verena, please you do introduce yourself. It would be better if you can tell a lot about yourself to the people, and from here you can take it forward. You can just share your screen. I'll stop sharing my screen, and yeah, I'll just stop sharing.
Okay.
So we request you to just give a little insight about your experience to the people over here, and then maybe you can come to your topic.
Okay, great. So, hello everybody. I'm really excited to share the UX psychology topic with you because this is something I've been working on for 30 years now, as Anuk already said. Yes, I'm a psychology part training. So I did my PhD in psychology. I also do have technical university education, but what I do is psychology. You need a technical understanding to do things, but the psychology is what I really love to do. And yes, I've been doing this for 30 years. I used to have my company. I had 25 people staff where we did respective consulting worldwide in projects. Then when I had my kids, I sold because I also wanted to spend time with my kids. And the kind of projects I do or did is like in a lot of things in air traffic business, where we see that the systems that the air traffic controllers, ground control or in towers, they use, that they are really safe to use, that they don't make any errors which can cause respective real problems. I did lots of projects in medical area where also there's lots of problems at stake or health at stake if something goes wrong. But I also did lots of projects in financing, banking, like those kind of traditional software areas. The things I do is I do consulting on how people should design things. I do consulting or do together with companies UX research, from typical research activities, talking to users, looking at the market, up to doing usability tests. I used to run my usability tests, usability lab, where we did huge tests. We had eye tracking, all the technical equipment that you can think of. And to now what I do, I teach lots of companies how they should introduce real UX activities in their development processes, in agile development, or mostly agile developments. So how you can really introduce UX in your company, and especially introduce the psychology aspect of all those things in the companies. I think I will now start with the content of my presentation, and we have time afterwards for any further questions. It's really a huge topic. UX psychology is very broad, and there's lots and lots of things. So it's always when I give talks that I have to think, what is it that I want to share? And if I had the time, I would like to share everything with you, but I have to pick out some things. So I hope I picked out things that are valuable for you. So let me just start my presentation. Yes, I think you should see it. Yes, cracking the UX psychology code. The idea is, how can I apply psychology in my daily work routine as a UX designer, UX researcher? What do I have to know? What's the value of psychology? Let me start with a story. Stories are always nice. There's a big mall in the US, and this big mall had the problem that so many customers went into the shops, and especially the big brands explained about it, to ask for the restrooms. And they came, and there are lots and lots of people always asking. And when you know that the layout of such shops is very precisely designed for the customers to buy things, if customers just come to ask for the restrooms, that's disturbing. So the big brands frightened or said they might leave the mall with their shops if they don't solve the problem. So the big mall, they had a consultant, and they made a study and to see what's the problems with the restrooms. And they had 300 students like kind of go through the mall for a period of 3 months, and they had eye tracking systems, and they had a specific path that they had to follow. So they had their like sheets, and they said, well, go to this shop and look up what this specific product costs. And then the next task was something which like led them through the mall and search for another product in another area. So they had a specific path that they went through the mall, and at specific points they had a pager, and then when the pager addressed them, they needed to go to find the next restroom. And the idea was that you have to know where the next restroom is within 1 minute and go there within 3 minutes. So they did this study and analyzed all the data. They put on some additional signs, and I think they even built one more area where they had restrooms, and they thought, now, well, everything is fine. But it wasn't. Not long after this study was completed, again, the brand said nothing has changed. And the brand, the mall owner was quite worried. So we did this study. We have no idea what we can change. So they called a psychologist. The psychologist is a partner who I work with very often. And what they did, they say, well, the problem of this study was that the users, the customers are the users, they were prompted to go and search for a toilet, but they, at that point, for a restroom, they didn't really have the personal urge to do so. So they changed the whole setup of the study and repeated it. And throughout the study, where the students had to find things that at many points they had to drink something, like take a soft drink, take a water, take a coffee or something. So throughout the study, they really had the urge to seek restroom. And what they found out is really, really interesting. The visual patterns of the people who really needed for themselves the restroom was 1 meter below where the people who were just prompted, now go and look for a toilet, were searching. So even though there might have been the sign which said restroom, this direction, 2 minutes or whatever, the people who really needed the restroom, they didn't see it because the visual search pattern was just 1 meter below. So after analyzing all the data, what they found out, they added the additional signs 1 meter below, and the problem was solved. Nobody ever complained that people don't find restrooms and come into the shops to ask. But what does this tell us? That the users, at that point, the customers are the users of the wayfinding systems in the mall. They were in a different emotional set. They were stressed when they needed to find a restroom. So the visual pattern just narrowed. And we know that under stress, our visual visual field narrows down, but it narrows in a way. No? It narrows down in a way that we would never have expected. So just knowing that the visual field decreases in a way that you don't find your way anymore is extremely important. And this shows us very nicely how important it is to know about the emotions of our users when they deal with our system, even in such a case. So this was just to get you a feeling of what I'm aiming at. Usability and user experience is always about predicting our users' behaviors. Only if we can predict what the user is going to do, or what we want the user to do, we can design to best possibly match this behavior. We can reinforce it if we want to, and we can maybe shape it or nudge it in a desired way if we want to. So what we must know is we must understand the why do users do something? Why do users decide upon something? And if we know the why, then we can predict users' behavior and design to meet the respective needs of the users. If you look at this guy here who's throwing a baseball, our perceptual nervous system would never be fast enough for anybody that if this guy throws a ball at me, if I were the pitcher, that I really see where the ball is going to be when it reaches me, and then start my behavior. That doesn't work. So what if I look at the guy, I have to start with my pitching, starting my behavior even before the ball leaves the guy's hands. So I have to predict where from the body behavior where he's going to throw the ball, because otherwise I would never react fast enough. And this is how our perception always, all our behaviors work. Our brain continuously predicts what will come next, because we would never react fast enough. This is an extreme example with the baseball guy, but in principle, we always predict what is going to come, and then some our sensory data, whatever we sense, see, hear, listen, taste, whatever we reaches us, we compare this income to what we predicted from our internal view, and this is our reality. Only so we take the data flow from the external, from the internal prediction, and this is 90% is my internal ideas of what is going to happen. Then comes the external, whatever happens, and I compare these two. So we mostly react upon our prediction and not on reality. And this is why so often things go wrong, because if my prediction is that this is going to work and in reality it doesn't work, I only realize this error if something goes extremely wrong. Otherwise, I just don't realize it, and I work on a wrong prediction. But let me explain it a bit more. We'll see examples afterwards. So what does our brain use to predict on a micro level what is coming? This is exactly what we want to know about our users, so we can address especially these issues. And so I have this user prediction pyramid which I work with. The first basic is always the biological and psychological sets, which are me as a user. I'm talking this for each user. We have such things. Is in. We saw in the restroom example that the biological psychological set was an emotional one, where slightly stressed already leads to narrowing down visual behavior. As you'll see details here in a second, but first the overview. So I have this biological psychological set. Then I take all the past experience which I have together. Again, this is very important because all my past experiences and other projects, all my life, make me as I am here, and produce all my behavior. And then we have the influence of the specific context where the usage takes place. So to go here a bit more detail, I won't go into every point here, is if I have the biological and psychological set, we have things about the general eyesight. We have things like, is the user stressed? What his glucose level, is he hungry or is he dehydrated? And people who are dehydrated already want to after being 20% dehydrated, 1 or 2% dehydrated, which is half a liter, decreases your mental abilities to by 20%. So hydration is a big issue. But what sensory differences have I? What is about my attention span? What's my sleeping behavior? All those very general body things. Am I moving? Am I sitting? I now currently really get to learn lots of things because I have my hand, which had a surgery, and I don't have my mouse finger at the moment. So I have to do everything with my left hand with the mouse. Everything takes twice as long. And I really learned to appreciate how automatically we can do things once we've learned them. So with this biological, psychological set, and then most important is all those past experiences. What culture am I growing up? What usage of technology am I? What I use? What's my domain knowledge? What what are maybe my sports activities? What I know from all the past experience in any field of my life that I did, which connect to the specific topic of the application we're talking about. And then I have the specific context. Is it noisy? What's the social context? Am I alone? Am I with my peers, with family? Is it stressful? What's the lighting, the smell, the haptics? And the whole pyramid plays a very, very important role on how users behave. And I will never know all these things of all my users, but these are things I need to think about to then go along to get to know my users and learn about them. I've picked up two issues. We have so many, but I picked up two. My individual reality, which we all have, and a couple of things about behavior. And all those, there you see all those small pyramids, because all those issues which we think of in psychology always build upon the user prediction pyramid, because all those always play a very important role. But first, let me give you some insights, because most people don't even know that, how we personally, each one of us, forms our reality. Now, I want you to do one thing. Put your thumb up like that, like hold it directly to the screen, like on my face or something. And now, look at the picture. Look at me, or look at your thumbnail, and your brain. At the moment, all you see, you visually really perceive sharp and colored, is everything that lies behind. Well, put it down again. The size of what lies behind your thumbnail. The rest is blurred and mostly not colored. So if you see here the graphic, this is the size of the screen. The orange one is approximately what lies behind your thumbnail. So this is my eyes where I'm looking, and this is my visual field. Everything that is right and left or up below my thumbnail is blurred, is mostly no colors, and is mostly made up only to detect movement and not anything that is sharp or colored. You can imagine that this visual apparatus which we work with has been developed by evolution millions and millions of years ago. And the idea for human is that when we stroll through the landscape, we don't want to get eaten by anybody or get frightened or injured by any animal or people who are dangerous for us. So our visual perception has learned to detect very well everything that is moving right or left from the thumbnail, so that we can detect a potential enemy and focus there. Otherwise, we don't need to see very intensely, very sharply what's left or right. We only need to see sharply and colored, maybe some fruit which we're looking at, or something that is really, we're strictly focusing it. But what does this mean for our user interface design? Look at this example. This is from the Austrian Rail company, where this a route planner where you can find your train from A to B. It's awful. It's really awful. And you will see, although this is an English version, you have still on top the things in German. But let's not think about this. This is just a screen. And now, what your brain approximately, or your visual perception sees, is like this. It's black and white. It's blurred. And yes, this is what your brain really, the input your brain gets. But your brain, and you see here this small piece in the middle from the calendar, which I still have focused and colored, is what I'm looking at. Imagine like that. And your brain now has to take this information and make something out of it, because this is all it gets. if you look at this of the website, like at that point, and look at everything, if you would do that, and then look at this, your brain fills in all those things that are black and white here and blurred to give you the impression that you're seeing everything fine, but you don't. It's your brain, your internal, your internal, that gives you the impression of seeing everything colored and everything fine. You don't do that. And now I want you to look at this specific, like look at the calendar here, look at this. And now something happens, but you probably won't realize it. Most of you won't have realized it. Look at it again and see, you won't see it. What I did is, if you look at the write down area here, I kind of changed a bit the text on the button. But if you look at the calendar, you have no way whatever how to see this, because your brain still fills in everything as you saw it before, because you think nothing has changed. Now, if I want people to realize down there, even if they look at the calendar, that something's happening, look again at the calendar. You have to make something that looks like a movement. The whole screen is a bit flabby, but you see the button is going up and down. You won't use jumping buttons in your interface. Don't do that. But I want you to show that if you want users to realize, to detect something out of their visual focus, like you think the user is looking on the left part of the screen and you want him to realize or detect there's something happening on the right part of the screen, you have to design something that gives the impression of movement, and a big contrast is also movement. Maybe it's contrast in color, contrast in size, something provides the idea of movement so that the people will focus there. Otherwise, they won't even detect that something's happening. This is what we do in safety critical areas, where it's very important to see that the user changes focus on the screen from A to B, left to right. We need to make sure that this peripheral vision, as we call it, conveys the impression of movement, and then people are going to look there. And sometimes we see that we just make something red on where we want people to focus. We don't have any, or hardly any, red sensors in the peripheral vision. They have no nerve cells which detect that. I don't want to go into detail about how the eye works. It's going too deep here. But if we have any colors in the peripheral vision, it's probably a bit of blue, but nothing else. So if you want to have users realize things in the peripheral vision, convey the impression of movement. Otherwise, your users won't see it. And this is also how we read. If you see here on the bottom line, you see, if I look at the letter 4, this is how your brain probably sees the letter, down here, the graphic. The letter 4, the writing 4 is seen 100% sharply. And then the more in the peripheral vision everything gets, the more blurred it is. And the less easier I can read it. And when we start learning to read as children, we learn to detect the patterns in the words, even if they are blurred and not sharply written. But what does this mean for our user interface? Take again this one. If we look at here, we look at the word information, which I put here now as we are focusing here, so colored and perfectly sharp. In the peripheral, besides this, our brain needs to have an idea what this word might mean. Down here, you see what it's really, what it would mean. So if I look here, my peripheral vision needs to detect the pattern of this word as I think what it could mean. So if you use terms that your user expects, like lines or whatever words the users know, users will be able to detect them, to realize, to perceive them, understand them, even if they use the peripheral area out of focus. If you use some terms because you find they sound fancy or whatever, people won't see them in the peripheral area, and if they don't see them, they will have a big chance of just losing them, not focusing them, not finding them. We have these big issues of users who really don't see things even though they are here. If you make good design, users will find everything, see everything. If you don't take care of those tiny issues of psychological perception, users might just miss, they just won't see it. They really just see something blank, and you have sometimes the problem that there's something written on the screen and users find the area just blank. They don't see it because you don't take care of peripheral vision accordingly. This is just one thing. A typical example here, this is a SMS which for a specific purpose I get from a insurance when I have to enter a code TAN to make some specific payments or whatever. And how they write it is they always put a blank between the letters so we can more easily understand them. But the idea was a good one, but the problem they had is that the blanks, the distances between the letters were too large, so that the people thought that it's blank. So in the beginning, everybody started entering like 9 blank, N blank, H blank. So people didn't understand it. Now they've got used to it, and it's a good way of making it more easily perceivable, those letters, because you can more easily focus them. Blurring is the letters are more apart, you can more easily recognize them, but users had to get used to it. Let's look at colors, one more part of perception, then we come to mental things. 10% of people in our world have a color deficiency. You might have experienced yourself, maybe at home, that you tell your partners, can you please bring my green jumper, and he brings the gray one or the brown one, and you kind of realize that everybody has a different feeling, perception of colors. And the problem is, if 10% of people have a huge color deficiency, not just a slight one, is that we design user interfaces where people just happen to really not be able to see things. And we might think, well, if they are colorblind, then it's just a matter of contrast. I make a big enough contrast, and then they will see it even if they see gray instead of red. But that's not how vision works. We have we have 3 color receptors, nerve cells, and each colors we see is kind of mix up of the different cells. So if I look here at these colors on the left-hand side, we have the vision of somebody with no color deficiency. Perfect, he sees red and green. But if I now have a green deficiency, or the red-green deficiency, they are completely the same for me. So if you have something red and green, they are completely the same. And if you have something written red on green background, it's just one blank area and the users won't see it. But this is not all. The problem is that we sometimes misunderstand the concept of complementary colors. So the problem is, if I have yellow and pink, rosé, and if I'm yellow-blue, if I have a yellow-blue deficiency, I can't detect also the difference between yellow and the complementary color. I don't want to go too much into detail here, but it's very important to know that colors do not only have a very heavy psychological impact, but we also have to realize that some people don't see things which we provide in a specific color. And it's not just that we say, well, this company always has red as a brand, so people will see the same things as they do in reality because we just use the same color. No, maybe they just can't read things on your screen because the colors just don't work out with complementary color. But yes, and here we have the examples also, but I want to go further because I come to the mental aspects now, which are maybe just the example on top is quite interesting. This is a traffic light which the university are also teaching. This is entering the garage. And the problem is, for colorblind people, it's just a shining light. They cannot understand whether it does perceive whether it's bright green or bright red. They just see it shining, so they never know whether they can enter the garage or not. And it's not a one-way, it's a two-way. So we quite often have the problem that people are entering the garage because they think, well, light is shining, I can go, but they just didn't perceive the green or the red, they just saw the light. But now let me give you another very important example how we form our reality. So we see different colors, like we have completely different backgrounds. But now let me explain this example. When we maybe you have already once decided to buy a car, and you go and think, well, should I buy a Seat or a Golf or whatever brand, completely irrelevant, and you drive public transport or however through the city, and you see lots of Golfs and lots of Seats, the cars you're thinking about buying. And after some time, because your brain shows them to you and directs the attention to you, because your brain knows that you are thinking about this big decision and want to provide you as much information about this as it think it could be valuable for you. And then you one day decide to buy a Golf. And then something interesting happens. In very short time, couple of days, you still see lots of Golfs on the road because it's your car, you have kind of a connection to it. But you don't see as many Seats anymore because your brain knows you have made the decision, and now it's not relevant for you to see any more Seats because you've made the decision, and it doesn't focus your attention to this car anymore. And this is how our brain works. We saw already that 90% of everything we perceive is something from internal. And this is how our brain focuses our attention without us knowing, because all the time, whilst I sit here, my brain realizes whether my feet are warm, I see my bookshelf, I see out the window there's a bird just on the tree over there, I see everything, and I hear everything, and I taste everything, and I feel everything, but it's by far too much for our brain. So we have to very, very intensely decrease all the inputs we get. Is that what our brain does automatically? And the way it does it is like it only decides to show us, to focus our attention on something which is of value. But give me another example. When you are, it's called the cocktail party effect. When you are on a party and you talk to somebody face to face, it seems like just a blurring something around you, and you're focused on what your partner or the one you're talking to just says. And then at some point, maybe, you suddenly hear your name. That's why Verena is written here on the picture. On the other end of the room. But why does it happen? You didn't hear anything beforehand. That is because your brain all the time scans everything around you. It does this while you sleep also, but that's not of importance here. And when your brain decides there's something going on around you which seems to be important, it directs your attention to it. So you suddenly hear your name, because your name is something very personal to you and mostly important. So your brain directs your attention there. So you look over there, who's mentioning your name. And this is what our brain does. It decides what is of interest for you, and this is what it shows to you. When you're pregnant, you see all people with babies. When you're hungry, you see all people eating or whatever. And this is also when I look at a website or a product. Whatever interests me is the things I see, I hear, whatever my brain thinks what's interesting. If my brain thinks this is not of interest to me, it might even completely erase it from my vision. And although there's something written there, I see a blank screen. Let me give you this example. I've written down here, this is from the German side, but here you have the translation. So it's from Philips, who have great products, and all the examples, if I show examples, doesn't have to do the company does bad things, just nice examples or sometimes. So if you see the picture on top, and you see down here what it says, coffee kitchen, body care, household, or health and baby, and you see this thing on top, you have now most people, I didn't beforehand also, has any idea what this is about. Because what we do is we look at pictures. Pictures are the most dominant visual integrity we have. So we always look at pictures first. And then we look at big things, like here the menu points. You see on the next screen how this builds up. So we have these pictures, no idea what this is. Then we have 4 menu points where we don't see which one is the one I'm in, because we have got 4 points in 2 different colors. So if only it's about coffee and kitchen, in case you want to have a guess. But we don't see that it's coffee or kitchen, because it's the menu points are just no, it doesn't say anything. So, but if I take this away, you can see it's a milk twist or something you can steam milk with. But if I see people look at the big menu points, look at the pictures, the idea that people miss out buying things like that just because they don't understand what it is quite large. This is how things like this happen. You have a big in the middle you would scroll. You have the upper menu, which again says coffee, kitchen, body care, household, and such. You scroll, and at some point the visual impression of what I showed you before happens, and you cannot connect the picture to any text that's available. So people miss out content, and people will find themselves misunderstood and probably leave the site. The problem is that we always very often have this idea that people are going to look closer. No, people don't. As soon as people find something which they don't understand, which they don't, which were picture and maybe text they don't connect, people are very rapidly off your site. So to give you this example between text and picture. So your reality, that's the first point, how we build up our reality, is like 90% internally made. All my experiences I had to take the whole pyramid. Everything comes from internal, and everything that is external, whatever you see on the screen or in the real world, is less than 10% of all the things that we think. So if we think, well, we decide something, people are going to read what's on the screen, people are going to see this, they won't in many cases, because I said prediction and reality, if this doesn't perfectly match, it won't work. So that's why we have to know about people. But the principle here is then when it comes to behavior. So we have this perceptual aspects, but then there's so many things how people behave. Let me give you examples. How they behave in a way that we would not have expected. This British Midland flight in the late 80s, it crashed. What happened? There were 2 pilots in the cockpit, and they smelled that something was burning, and they knew that the oxygen or air supply for the cockpit came from the right engine. And well, it's smelling like something's burning, and on the display that they found, there's the black one down there, and unfortunately this was a new display. They didn't look any closely because they knew air supply from the right engine. It's smelling like smoke, so they turned off the right engine. But problem was the air supply for the cockpit had changed. This model of the airplane, although it was again the same 737 400, they had changed the air supply, and that came from the left engine then. So what they had done, they had turned off the one engine that was working. And at the time they realized the error, it was too late and the plane crashed. So we have this mental model, and this is just an easy and sad but good example of we have those ideas how things work, and we just apply them. And we, even in such critical incidents where we already know that there's a problem, we don't question our mental models, we just apply them. And at that point, when they realized that their mental model was wrong, it was too late. Give you an easy example. If you look at the spin box like this, on the upper example, if you have the number 5 written in it and you press the upward button, you will probably know that expect that it's 6, and the downward button that it's 4. But if it's March written inside and you press the upward button, take a second and think what you would expect to appear. Right. Normally, about half the people say April, and the other one says February. So, but there's no right or wrong. But some people have this mental model that is like a sorted list, like January, February, March, April, and so forth. So they will probably have this visual impression, and they say February. Other people have this mental model of this thing that is kind of a timeline, like January, February, March, April, so forth. And then upwards means April. And this is just the example again. Here we have a mental model, an idea how this might work, and we just apply it and we don't question it. And only if things really go wrong, we realize that our mental model didn't work. At that point, we would use a calendar feed widget or something, but to give you the idea of mental models on very easy things. We need to also, when we think about mental models, very easily speaking, think of mental models of users' tasks. We all know that we need to know the tasks of our users that they have in mind when they use our system. But what we really need to know is the task the user mentally has in mind. So if I go to an ATM machine, I have in mind I want to have money, and maybe I want to have €100 and split up in €20 bills to do something. And if I now want to control what the user does, I need to have this task in mind. And I used to work for a bank, and they said the most important thing is we don't want users to forget their cards in the money, the cards, bank cards, when they leave the ATM machine. So our task was to make sure that users don't forget it. And it's for all the things I do, the most important thing is that you know the mental model of your users, of their task. So you have this like kind of bow, the like bridge something. And if you know when the user is ending mentally his task, and the user is mentally finished with his task when he has money in hand, you have to make sure that everything you want the user to do until he's mentally finished his task is done before that. Because as soon as the user has the money in hand, he's mentally drifting off, his attention drops, and he's very likely to forget the card. But if you have the user take the card and then afterwards get the money, you nudged him, you kind of shaped his behavior in a way that it's fine for you and he won't forget the card. And you have so many examples in user interfaces where we know this bow or this span of the user's task, and by knowing really this mental model of the task of the user, we can make sure he doesn't forget anything. And we can also make sure that he stays focused for whatever reason we want. Then about behavior, I just give you glimpses of all those things because we can't go into detail everything, just to give you a big picture. We mostly, as I already said, act without thinking, relying on what has worked for us in the past, worked for us as an individual. And also, we've got lots of inheritance in our behavior of worked on humankind, of all the humans in the past. And by that, we have developed a huge number of so-called cognitive biases and behavior patterns. These are things where mostly all users behave or decide or think the same. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. And these are the toolbox of UX psychology. We need to know about the perception. We need to know about the subjective reality we all each individually has. But we not have to know about those cognitive biases and behavioral patterns, because they are the things that really let us shape behavior. Let me give you an example. Maybe you know this. There was a study, and they gave people in such car washing drive-ins those cards. One group, a couple of hundred people got the right card, and another couple of hundred got the left card on the way around. And they just wanted to see whether it makes a difference what kind of layout this card here has on the effect whether people return. As you see, on both of those cards, the user has to return come 8 times to the car wash, and then he'll get the 9th one for free. If you count them, it's just the same. But the visual layout is different. But we have something which we call the implied progress effect in humans. And just take a second and think which one works better, do you think, for users? So which one for the car wash, for which one did more people come back to really 8 times to get the free car wash? Do you think there's a difference? Well, the difference is on the right hand side. 79% more people returned and really finished these cards than on the right side. And this is the empowered progress effect. It's then we humans, when we started doing something, then we have the tendency really to prolong to finish something. So we have to see the specific end. So we need 10 times the right hand side, but we see that we already did something. And if we want people to really finish up something, you see here like a progress bar where the user really sees, okay, I have to have 4, I just cut it it had 4 steps, I cut it a bit stupidly. You have to do 4 things. If you really show the users, well, these are things you already finished, you're on your way, you're ready to go, you've almost done it. It's by far more likely that the user is going to finish up because I've already invested all those things when I'm going to finish it. And as we know from many of the good ideas we have or the good things we think for the new year, the first couple of days are the most difficult ones. Once we've got started, this empowered progress kicks in and we prolong. So whatever you provide to your users, and even if you kind of think something up, which is the first steps that the user has already done with, like for this car wash, just making it 2 crosses. You've read it, we donate 2 ones to you, but the visual ideas you've already done 2 on your card. Show your users that they have already done something, they have already invested something, and they're by far more likely to proceed. Another example, they did this study, and all those studies on cognitive biases. They had this young guy on the street step up to people. They tried it with guys, with girls, works both. Sorry, madam, would you have some coins for the bus, please? And in some cases, he also asked, but you're free to accept or refuse. In other cases, the guy didn't say this second sentence. Now you would say, well, this logically I can refuse, so what's the difference? But in the case where where the guy only said the first sentence, 10% gave him money. In the second case, where he already included, but you're free to accept or refuse, 48 people gave him money. And this is something, a psychological effect we call the reactance. If the people have the feeling that you want to force them to do something, they have this feeling, I won't do this. You always have to provide the user a second option, and even if it's very unlikely that they want to take it, but provide a second option, and people are by far more likely to jump in the thing you want them to do, because you don't provoke this reactance feeling. This is what you have to do with educating kids, whatever. This reactance is something very, very strong. Always give people another option. Very important in e-commerce. Another effect, also very important, paradox of choice. We think that it's great to have many options, but the problem is the more options we have, if we take marmalade or whatever choice we have, the time to respond increases because we think. And the problem is our brain wants cognitive ease. Our brain wants, or we want, to have easy decisions. And the longer a decision takes, the more our brain thinks like, oh, this must be a very difficult decision because it takes so long. And this is where the problem starts. The brain doesn't want to make a wrong decision, so what happens? It doesn't make any decision. And they did this study on many things, but the nice one is, as you see below, they had shops and they offered marmalade or jam to buy. And on some days they offered 24 different flavors, and on other days they offered only 6 different flavors. The idea was, well, they have so many flavors, great. But what happened? They saw on the many options on the left hand side, only 4% of people bought something. On the right-hand side, having only less choices, people bought 31%. Because too many choices decrease our cognitive ease, makes us feel uncomfortable, because you always have this feeling, well, if there's so many options, whatever I choose, I always have the problem of there might have been something better, so I don't feel well. On the right hand side, if it's only 6 flavors and I know these 3 I never like, I don't have to decide maybe between the other ones. Well, I quite easily decide which ones I like. This is something where psychologists also say this is a big problem of, especially of youth nowadays, because by having so many choices, you have to decide against so many things, because choosing one thing has not choosing hundreds of others, and the subjective satisfaction with all the other things people have by whatever is now, although we have so endless options, is by far lesser than it was like 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago, there's a great TED talk of Barry Schwartz about this, and he kind of says that when he went to a shop to buy jeans 30 years ago, he was just a question like, take this size or this size, model A, model B, and whatever he took, he was satisfied with, because there were no more options. Nowadays, you go to a shop, even within one shop, you've got hundreds of choices, not thinking of what all the other shops and all the online options, whatever you have. So it decreases satisfaction if you have too many options. There was a big Head and Shoulders, I don't know whether you know the shampoo, and they had the problem that sales were rapidly decreasing, and they had at that point in 22 versions of hair shampoo, and they decreased these 22 by half, I think, and the sales went up again, because people wanted to buy this brand when they feel connected, but they just didn't know what to choose, so they chose nothing. So don't provide too many choices. People, although they think they like it, they don't. So if you, these are just very, very tiny insights which I can share with you, because the field of psychology is so big. And if we look at the pyramids, there's prediction pyramid, which I work with, you can apply to behavior, to thinking, to decision, to remembering, to learning, to all those big psychological topics. So if you learn to apply psychology for whatever parts you choose to apply or you use, you should always apply to your UX research methods, so that you see that you do them correctly, that you ask the right questions, that you don't provoke reactance, that you don't introduce cognitive biases and things like that. And you should apply to your design. If you know how people perceive, if you know how people what they don't see, if you know how people make choices being overwhelmed, what they do with when they are stressed, what they don't see anymore, what they see, you make by far better products. And if you learn to apply psychology, your users' behaviors and decisions will no longer be a mystery to you. You won't think, well, I have no idea why my users did this or that now, because you will understand the background of humankind by far more easily.
Thank you so much, Verena, for your insightful presentation, and thank you for giving us a lot of time to talk in detail and give the answers of the questions. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.